Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Brett's Brain. Today we're going to talk about why you might need to extend your runway as a startup and 4 ways that you can accomplish that feat. Thanks for checking out the channel. I'm Brett Brohl, former entrepreneur, current venture capitalist. If you like it, make sure you subscribe, share, rate, review, do all of those things and ask us questions. Our goal is to help entrepreneurs succeed. Would love to answer any thoughts or questions you have. All right, runway. What even is runway? Runway is actually a pretty simple calculation. It's how much money do you spend on a monthly basis usually, and versus how much cash do you have left in the bank. So basically, how much time do you have relative to the cash you have? So if you spend $10,000 a month and you have $100,000 in your bank, you would have 10 months of runway left before you run out of money and would need to either shut down or figure something else out. And oftentimes founders get into the position where they're going to need to extend their runway because they don't have enough traction. They don't have the right KPIs. They don't have enough revenue to go out and really be able to raise that next round of venture capital that they need to raise. And so they're thinking about what are different ways that we can extend runway? What are different ways we can make that $100,000 last 20 months instead of 10 months, which gives them more time to grow the business to the point where they will be able to raise the next round of venture capital. And so this is a situation founders unfortunately find themselves in all the time. Now, there's a couple of trade-offs here that you usually have to understand when you're talking about doing runway extension. And one is that usually the goal is to get the business to a point where you can do one of two things. One is raise that next round of capital, or 2, cash flow break even, which gives you an infinite amount of runway for you to do with your company as you see fit. The third case is sometimes you do need to extend your runway long enough to try and sell the company, but that one's a little bit less common and not usually top of mind for founders at the early stage. Usually it's for one of those first 2 things. And so the trade-off oftentimes is when you're reducing your burn or to extend your runway, you also reduce the resources that you have to grow your company. And that can be really hard because you actually need to hit better metrics than what you have today in order to raise another round. And if you're extending your runway, you're going to have to do it with less resources. So here's 4 ways to really be thinking about it. The first 2 are the most common that you hear about. The first is layoffs, letting people go. And so if you're going to go through the layoff route and let people go, that's usually the most effective way to extend runway because that's usually your biggest expense as an early stage startup is people. The hard part with it is that oftentimes you need those people to grow and expand your company, not to mention the people side of it. It's really, really hard to let good people go through no fault of their own. And so if you can avoid layoffs, you should try to in any way possible because layoffs are really, really tough. Another way to think about this and reducing your total people spend is salary reductions. And if you have a small team and people that are really bought into your company, sometimes you can keep those people in place and keep all of those resources and do a short-term salary reduction, hopefully, where that way you can hopefully continue to grow and build your business at the same time, but reduce burn. The key with a salary reduction and a layoff, frankly, is that the earlier you do them, the larger the impact you have. So if your only expense is people and you spend $10,000 a month on people and you do a 10% salary reduction, you're now down to $9,000 a month. If you do that when you have $2 million in the bank, that's going to extend your runway a lot longer than if you only have, $50,000 left in the bank. And you might need to do more drastic cuts the later you wait to do them. And so when you do these matters a lot as well. A great way to think about salary reduction is you try to say to your team, hey, we need to extend runway. We're going to do a temporary salary reduction until we're able to raise our next round of capital, but you can't make promises that you're going to bring them back in a month or 2 months or 3 months. It's based on accomplishing a goal, which is usually bringing more capital into the bank. It's also actually really hard to make promises that you will then pay back that missed salary in the past. Because that actually can create a hurdle to raise your next round of capital. Because now you have this debt on your balance sheet, which is salaries owed or salaries payable. And new investors tend not to want to come in and invest $100,000 to just pay back people for the past. They're investing in the future. And so one way you can compensate your people for taking salary reductions is additional equity and making additional equity grants. And so if you're going to go the salary reduction path, my typical advice is to offer equity in exchange for that salary reduction versus promising to pay back missed salary in the future. Because an equity grant tends not to be as much of a hurdle when raising a subsequent round of capital if that's your end goal. If your end goal is to get back to break even eventually and just have a company that lasts forever, then you could potentially say, hey, yep, and once we're break even, we can start paying your salaries back in that case. So that's your second tip, is salary reduction. If you can do it and you can extend your runway long enough to do a salary reduction versus a layoff, then I would tend to advise that you go salary reduction path. Now, if you have people on your staff that are underperformers, doing a layoff might not be the worst idea if they're underperforming. But if you need all of those resources and all those people to continue to grow, try that salary reduction path first. And typically the founders and the CEO need to lead and take a salary reduction first before they say, hey, team, you all need to take it. If you're not going to take it yourself, there's no way you should ever ask your team to reduce their own salaries. In fact, most of the CEOs that I've worked with will actually reduce their salary well before they ask their team to reduce theirs. And so they tend to take the hit first. It's the way of entrepreneurship is, especially if you're the founder, you tend to get hit the hardest first. In order to make your business succeed, you also have the most equity, so the most stake in the game. Okay, now let's not talk about the reduction or removal of people. Another great thing that you can try to do is renegotiate contracts with your vendors. Many vendors that work with startups understand how risky it is and are willing to potentially reduce their fee to you in order to help you, hopefully survive to that next level where they can continue to have you as a customer. Because if you go away, they lose 100% of the contract they have with you. Especially software vendors tend to have a little bit more flexibility here. Whereas if you can survive for 12 months, at least you'll be paying them a little bit of something. And if you're able to then turn on the growth engines, theoretically your contract with them might grow in the future. So it'll actually increase their customer lifetime value if you survive. And when the alternative is shutting it down to zero and turning it off straight away, oftentimes your vendors will be willing to have a conversation with you about runway extension, and reduction of costs. So don't be afraid to talk to your vendors. It's not always the most fun conversation, but it's something that's worthwhile doing. And honestly, it's better than having to go to your employees and say, hey, we're going to do layoffs, or I'm going to ask everybody to reduce salary. So that's number 3. The fourth thing that you can do, and this is, I think, underutilized strategy for startups, is go to your customers and offer them a discount to pay up front. So if you have on annual contracts, or you have people that are on monthly recurring contracts, go to those customers and say, hey, monthly recurring contract person, if you pay us for your next 12 months up front, we'll give you 2 months free. We'll give you a 10% discount. We'll do something like that. And we see this all the time in the wild. You see all the time for any type of software subscription is just general consumers where, hey, if you pay by month, it's $10, but if you pay for an entire year up front, it's only $8. So people are giving discounts all the time to get that cash flow up front. There's no reason why your startup shouldn't make that offer. That cash up front, if you can get paid for a year ahead, man, that's really valuable and can have a dramatic impact on your actual runway. Because runway is about cash in the door. It's not about your actual profit and loss statement. It's about how much cash do you have and how much cash do you burn on a monthly basis. So don't be scared to go to customers and ask them to say, hey, we'll give you we're running a special this month. We're giving 10% discounts to anybody that wants to pay for the next 12 months up front. It's a really great tactic to use, and it really actually can add some cushion to your company and help you leverage your customers to grow your business even bigger, where you can get to that next point where you can raise a round of venture capital. All right, that's a little bit about burn, a little bit about runway, and 4 tactics that you can use as an entrepreneur to extend your runway to get your business to that point where you can raise your next round of capital or get to cash flow break even. If you like it, make sure you share, subscribe, and ask us questions. We'd love to help you in your entrepreneurial journey.